friends, Rebecca here, the Dragon Librarian from Farmington Community Library, and Alderon and I are here today to talk to you about a book that we just recently read that we absolutely loved. I think it's just very powerful, it was very emotional, and even though it was a very short book, it really packed quite a punch, and I'm going to be thinking about it for a long time after this. This is a book that was actually recommended to me by one of my fellow librarians who just finished reading it, and she really loved it, so I knew I had to read it too. And I feel like it's very, very perfect to read around now this time period because of a lot of the stuff that's going on in the world. So the book is called Kent State. Kent State, and it's by Deborah Wiles. Kent State. Now, this book is historical fiction, very borderline nonfiction, right? Because it talks about the events that really happened, but it's told through a lot of different points of view. So Kent State, you may not know a lot about what that is when they're referring to that. So it was something that took place during the Vietnam War, when there were a lot of protests going on about the Vietnam War, particularly among young people. So young people at colleges did not feel that the Vietnam War was right. They thought it was wrong. So they were protesting at their college. Sounds a lot like some of the stuff that's been going on with a lot of college campuses protesting the war in Palestine, right? And what's going on in Gaza right now. So very relevant, even though this took place decades ago. So the difference is at Kent State, which is a college in Ohio, but in this series of 4 days, armed guards came and ended up killing 4 students and wounding many, many others. They shot into a crowd of protesters and students died. They died for standing up for what they believed in. Some of them, because some of them were there just on college campus that day. Some of them weren't even involved in the protesting. Now, I'm going to read just because in the beginning of this book, it gives you a lot of the facts about what happened, which is a very good place to start. Okay. At Kent State, it talks a little bit about the Vietnam War, if you don't know a lot about it. And then it goes to say near the end here, at Kent State University in Kent, Ohio, student protests were met with the Ohio National Guard's occupation of campus and May 4th, 1970, okay, the murder of 4 Kent State students and the wounding of 9 others when the Guard troops opened fire on these demonstrating students. So this book takes place within the 4 days of that happening. Now, I think this book is very short. I read it in one sitting, and it is very unique in that the way that the story is told is through many, many points of view. So it's almost like a book in verse, okay? But you're hearing the points of view of other students on campus. You're hearing the points of view of other people that live in the town, like townspeople. You're hearing the points of view of many, many different people and what they are thinking as this is all happening. So why is a book like this important, right? Why is it worth reading a book like this? This might not be about a time period that you're particularly interested in. Up until very recently, I did not know much about the Vietnam War at all. I vaguely knew about this happening, but I didn't know a lot of the details. And why is this important? You might say, well, I'm not really interested in the Vietnam War, but this is very pertinent to a lot of things, like I said, that's going on today. History repeats itself, right? So the reason why I think this book is so important is because you can get so much more out of a book like this versus a history text or an article online. An article or a history textbook or just reading the facts is going to give you just that. It's just going to give you the facts. It's going to say, on this date, this happened. On this date, this happened. And anybody can memorize a series of dates. But what makes a story like this so hard-hitting is you get to know the 4 students who died. The author of this book did extensive research when writing it to really try to get a feel of those 4 students who died. You're not going to get that from a history lesson. You're not going to get that from reading a newspaper article. It's the reason why historical stories like this one, like the Diary of Anne Frank, like the graphic novel Mouse, are so important because you're hearing the words of people who were there. Or if they weren't there, like in the case of this author, you're hearing the well-researched stories from other people who were there. And it just seems to hit a lot harder when you're reading about that. Because, for example, I just want to tell you a little bit about these 4 students, right? Now, I'm not going to tell you everything about them, obviously, because, you know, you want to read the book yourself, I'm sure. So, the 4 students who died, Sandy, Allison, Jeff, and Bill. Those are their names, okay? Sandy, her father was a Holocaust survivor. She wanted to be a speech pathologist. And she wasn't even involved in the protests, Sandy. She was just walking to class and was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Allison was beautiful. She loved reading ahead in class. And Kent State was the only school she applied to because she loved it so much. Jeff, a lot of M's for Jeff. He loved math, he loved motorcycles, he loved the Mets, and he loved music. And he was in a band. And Bill was a basketball player. He loved geology and he majored in psychology. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Think of some of the friends that you have and how deep they are and their personalities. These were real people. They were real people that died. And, you know, sometimes reading a story like this can be way more emotional than just reading about it in a textbook. One last thing I want to say. Allison, the reason the cover is this with a flower in the gun, in the butt of the gun here, is because of a quote that Allison actually said, which was, "Flowers are better than bullets." And she actually did run up and put a flower on one of the guns during this protest. So there's so many things you can learn from this book. You can learn a lot of factual information like I did. And you can also, like I did, just learn a lot of the emotional heft of a story like this. Now, I know this is like a really heavy book I'm talking about. It's not very long. So you're not going to be mired down in sadness, you know, for hundreds and hundreds of pages when you're reading this, okay? It's a perfect length for a book like this, I think. And it's just an absolutely wonderful story that's told in a very unique way that really just conveys exactly what happened during that incident back in 1970. And like I said, very, very relevant to a lot of stuff that's going on in the world right now. So even if you're not interested in history or this particular part of history, if you want to be able to compare it with current events, wonderful book. Kent State. Well, that's what we've got for you guys today. I hope that you're really interested in reading this book. If so, please feel free to come check it out from Farmington Community Library. And also, please give this video a like. Would really appreciate it. And thank you so very much for watching, friends. And have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day.